Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Spotlight, a show about people, passion, and purpose. My name is Renée Holder, your host, and I'm so excited that you've tuned in. Now, my first guest is bold, funny, strong, and outspoken. She's a creative, she's a singer, she's a businesswoman, and with roots from my birthplace of Trinidad and Tobago, shout out TNT, that alone brings out the fabulousness. So let's welcome to the Spotlight, Trisha Dayal. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, Trisha.
Thank you, Renee. How exciting.
I know. It's so funny because you were the first person I kind of told about the series. And as COVID progressed, you're the first person that reminded me that I had to come back and do it. So thank you. Thank you for the push.
I was just so excited to see what your concept was going to be and who you're going to have on, because I feel like you know such interesting people. You have such a varied life.
So thank you, Trisha. All right. So before we get this party started, what is your libation of choice?
Well, I am drinking right now a beer. So it's a dark beer. So sorry, you can kind of see because I'm using a background.
Yeah. Oh, very dark.
So
very
this
nice.
is from Little Beasts Brewery, which is in Whitby. And
nice.
It's called Wait So Long. And it was something they came up with for Black History Month. I don't know if you can kind
of that's so cool.
So I really like, I'm very into skulls and what have you. So I loved like their marketing. And so I started, buying a lot of things there just because I like the bottles, but then the product is fantastic. So I keep going back and buying them.
That's awesome.
And awesome. What are you having?
I'm having a rosé wine, very fresh. This is actually a bottle of wine. Actually, it's from Israel. I don't know if it's Dalton, it's called.
Okay.
I don't see the label very well. But a bunch of my friends in our bubble, we went out for a weekend away back in, oh my gosh, I can't remember the month now, September maybe. Mm-hmm. And we had to restock some of the libations at the house. And at the wine store, I said, hey, propose a couple of brands for me. And she said Dalton. So I said, all right, Dalton it is. So cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
Welcome to episode 1. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. So before I get started with each, I want to always talk about how we know each other. So I met Trisha as a member of the Toronto Mass Choir back in, I think it's 2001 or 2002. I can't even remember now. Until I moved to the US. So shout out to TMC. Woo, TMC. I know we had too much jokes at TMC, a lot of really great missions work. So what was your favorite memory?
So I was in TMC for 22 years. Can you believe it? So I joined in 1992 when I was 15. So I went on almost all the trips. The only one I didn't go on was to Italy, and I believe you did go on that one.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So my favorite memory was when we went to Poland, actually. I would have to say Poland because I loved meeting the people and the other gospel choir that we got to meet there and encourage. And I still follow that choir and the people that were in it. It's really exciting to see now that, they were quite young at the time. They were a lot younger than us. And a lot of them now are, married with their own families. And we also got a chance to see some of Poland and visit Wieliczka, which is a salt mine, which is incredible, as well as go to visit the Auschwitz site, which I feel like I will never forget because it was just so heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's awesome. No, mine was Italy. I'm sorry you didn't get to go.
Yeah.
And actually, it was probably my only missions trip because I wasn't there for too long. I kind of got there, we did an album, then we went to Italy, and then I kind of left. But again, I was moving to the US, so it wasn't because of the choir. I love the choir, I miss them. I actually cried when I left because it was so heart-wrenching. But yeah, Italy was jokes for days. It was bumpy to get there, but when we got there, just I've always loved Italy. I'd been there a couple times, but it was different to be in a space where we're actually doing worship, and
Hmm.
that piece of it was really new to me. So it was so wonderful. And then, of course, we went to Pompeii for a day trip, and
Oh,
that was
right.
awesome.
Yeah.
And just the jokes that the choir had, it was a really great bonding time. So, cheers to TMC, still rocking it after all these years. And I know a lot of our friends are still there. A
They're
lot
still
have moved
there.
on,
Yeah.
but Toronto
Yeah,
Mass
and it
Choir is
was
still
really
doing a lot
it
of
was
work.
such a time, it was a touring time. I feel like, and not just because we're in this pandemic, but touring had really kind of slowed down since I sang with another group too at the same time. And that was that time of like the 2000s, I guess,
Yeah.
was like our touring heyday. Like I had so many, we had 2 tours a year with that other group that I sang with, which was the Nathaniel Deck Chorale. And then TMC, we would have a tour every few years or so, but I don't know if that's something they'll be able to return to ever. Not only because of the pandemic, but it just seems so unsustainable now.
Yeah. Well, let's hope for the best, Maybe in another episode, I'll have Karen come on and do
Yeah.
an episode. Shout out, Karen. Heads up. But yes, I do hope so, because, I always was very proud of the work TMC did. And I still think we were the best choir in Toronto. So point blank, end of story. All right, so let's get into the business of this episode. So we are single ladies of a particular age. I'm older than you, so let me just call that out. But I've embraced my single status, for years now. So I'm unapologetically free and be able to just enjoy my life. After all of these years of, I lived in Toronto, then I moved to Oregon, and then I moved and now in New York. But, where do you stand at this stage in your life, and like, how do you feel right now where you are?
Yeah, well, I feel great. Honestly, I feel like I'm finally being the me that I've always wanted to be. I didn't feel like I knew myself very much earlier on, because I was kind of pursuing the life that a lot of us feel pressured to pursue, which is school, and then a good job, and then marriage, and then a family. And when those things don't work out for you, then you're kind of like, what do I do now? So I've been single the better part of 10 years, I would say. I dated a couple people in that time, which amassed to about 2 years. But I'm not interested in dating anymore. I feel like I'm good. It tends to, for me, the kind of choices that I've made in the past, I feel like I'd rather just stick with being single, and I know what to expect and who to rely on, and that's me. What about
Amen.
you?
No, I think I'm the same. I think my family, my father had, I think, 5 sisters. 5 sisters. I'm sorry, aunties, if I made that number wrong. But they were, only one of them got married, and the rest are single to this day. They might have boyfriends, but they never really married or had kids. And our generation, so my father's girls, 4 girls in my family, 1 got married and the other 3 did not.
Mm-hmm.
And but it was more of my father raised us to be independent and
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you could look after yourself. And I think that kind of ended up being how we were raised. But at the same time, I think I wanted independence from early.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you. I set targets. I want to have my own car by this date and my own home by this date, and I wanted to hit those targets. So you're coming right out of university. You got OSAP bills, and you're just like, I want to get this monkey off my back, and then be able to buy a new car and things like that. So yeah, I think I was so targeted and focused on the career piece of getting that together, that I dated here and there, but it was never a focus. And
Yeah.
I'm really horrible at noticing when guys are hitting on me.
Oh.
I'm horrible. I never notice. People are like, Renee, he's into you. I'm like, where from? You know, I was horrible.
Well, you're very naturally embracing of new people, or you're talkative.
Yes.
And we're the same sign too, so we gotta say shout out to Libras, right?
Indeed.
So when you're used to just starting up conversation with people, you kind of assume the other person has the same intentions at heart, so you don't really think of it that way. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I always said to any of my guy friends who asked why I was still single, I was like, because I haven't met a guy bold enough to hit on me hard. Like, you know, like make your point, make it clear. Don't play these little games, because I will not catch them. Sorry. Because I got other things to do. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, I'm the same. I kind of got comfortable, especially when I moved away to the US. Again, from Toronto, it was culturally closer. So I had my West Indians here. And when I moved to Oregon, really like no West Indians. Shout out to Oregon, but not enough true West Indian culture that I could not really establish like that sort of relationship with a guy. So when I moved back to New York, I kind of got back, all right, East Coast, my people, got back over here. And but yeah, still it was like, okay, got to get my home set up, got to get my business set up. And I was just heads down. So I never made time for it. And God is good. I have everything I need. And, some people say, well, at some point, wouldn't you, if somebody, I'm like, sure, a little companion, nothing's wrong with a little companion, but no one's putting a ring on this finger. It's like Whoopi said on The View. It's like, I don't want anybody in my house.
Right. And I completely feel like that. I mean, I've always felt, I'm an only child, so I've always felt like, I don't want people around. Like, even with my parents, it was just us, and we're the only ones in Canada. The rest of our family are either in Trinidad or in the US. And so I grew up like without any real siblings around, and cousins or anything, any extended family really. So I'm just used to being by myself. So when I separated from my ex-husband then, which is now 10 years ago, wow. I can't believe it. I just was like, well, that's it. I'm gonna, be by myself. And now I love it. Like I'm not averse to dating someone, but I don't know if I want to live with someone again. I mean, I've tried it like with those other two people that I was talking about that were short-term things. Like, we did live together for short times, but I mean, to me now, especially after this time, I just like, I don't want to be with someone who doesn't have their own place too. I just want to be in my own place sometimes.
Yeah, it is a whole different, especially COVID really brought that to light.
Right.
Because now you're 24/7 in your house. And I always tell people, anybody you talk to who knows me knows that when I do want to click and clack on the locks of my house, I am as happy as can be in my home. Because again, it's one of those things, and I tell anybody single, or even if you're with someone moving into your first place, take the time and make it home, because there's nothing like in your house knowing that you can put your feet up on the couch and chill, watch movies, take a snooze, read a book, and you are free as a bird in some place most comfortable.
I really wish that more, I mean, now it's kind of cost prohibitive because both of us live in places that are expensive. So it is hard for people to move out on their own when they just, unless they're going to school.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. But I only moved out when I got married, which was at 29. And I really do wish that I had time on my own first. Because I feel like it's very important. And since I didn't have that time, and it just, I don't know, there are just things that I just don't prioritize now. Like, I am using a background because I don't have my place how I want it to be yet. And so it's just like a bare wall. So I'm like, I'll just use a background so it'll look nicer, but like your place, I feel like you've always been a little bit ahead of me because you're older as well, like you said. So I'm always like looking up to what's Renée doing. So in a few years, I'll be where Renée is. That's what I always think.
Oh, bless your heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I always say, make house home, and you'll always, feel comfortable there. So let's deep dive a little deeper in the whole single woman
Sure. Yeah.
aspect, especially Black women. So I could name about 10 Black women in my life that are
Mm-hmm.
still single to this day. Some of them with varying um, plans for, getting married or wanting to get married. And why do you think there's so many of us that are out there that are single?
Well, I feel like it to me, most everything boils down to the patriarchy, right? So you know
Okay.
that I'm more into social activism than most of our friend group is, or most just generally Christians are. And because of that, I really can say that I've studied these things, and I study, my relationships and what's going on in the world and what have you. And I really do feel that that's what it boils down to. And when people are involved with more, like, Christians, we always say religion versus relationship. So more religion, when they're involved with more of the religion aspect of what they feel their life should be as, which is how I felt when I was more involved with church, then I think that that is a real factor in why people maybe today feel like they don't need to follow that anymore. So, for us, we're talking about things that happened to us like 15 years ago or so, right? And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
now I feel like the younger folks are able to really take stock of who they are younger, which I really envy. Because like I said, I've only found out really who I am, and keep finding that out over the last while that I've been single. But I think that because they do that, they're more, they have more ownership over who they are, and they have more ownership over what they want to do.
Yeah.
And who they want to be with, and the kind of qualities that people should possess. So for us in our age group, a lot of the problems boil down to, for me, I really don't want to date people who are not BIPOC. That's
Okay.
I prefer to date a man of color, and I am straight, so that's my preference. But what I find is that our heritage and just how we've been brought up, it's very tough to find a man who will ideologically be on the same page as me.
Right.
Right? With how you treat women. And they think they are, though. That's the thing.
Yes.
Right? They think they are until it comes out, and then you realize, oh, okay. So yeah, it's very tough at our age. And a lot of the time too, men have been very hurt, and they haven't had a chance to even talk about that. They don't have a lot of friends who they can talk to the way we talk.
Right.
Right. They don't have a lot of interest. Like, I see men on dating apps, and like their interests are going to the gym and watching sports. So, for me, that's not really interest, but it's not like a varied interest, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yes.
like
Yes.
such a narrow thing. And yeah, okay, maybe they'll go to the theater with us, but I want someone who enjoys that as much as I enjoy that.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
So what have
totally,
you found?
I totally agree. I think there's a couple of, I read a study that said, especially it was probably more in the US, but it had this article several years ago that was saying, well, the reason why there's so many women of color that are not or single is because of the mass incarceration of Black men. I'm like, okay, well, they're not the only men in the world.
No.
So, but yeah, like to your point, you have a preference. And some of these women, they must have, interviewed, had that preference. And so, yeah, you hear that typical, I shouldn't say excuse, but there is that sense that there's so many men of color in incarcerated that they think that their pickings are slim. But, if you broaden your scope, and I dated of all colors and didn't have really a particular preference. It always came down to who treated me right.
Mm-hmm.
Especially being coming from a family of all girls with a father who treated women with respect.
Mm.
I wanted to make sure that nobody pulled any shenanigans because they were out the door. So, there's the career hustle, right? So I'm guilty of wanting to make sure that my career was stable so I could look after myself in the event that
Mm-hmm.
I met someone who could not. And
Mhm.
so, the whole idea of not settling, don't settle for shenanigans, because again, you've taken your time to make sure that you're financially able to support yourself.
Mhm.
Um, I think you touched on, fear of disappointment, or, that they've had a bad experience and didn't get a chance to heal.
Right.
So they bring that also to the table. So,
Right.
again, and it's sad because a lot of women think they have their Prince Charming,
Yeah.
and then down the line, that rears its ugly head, and they determine, well, maybe I could change him, or maybe it's just this one, and they pretend like they stay
Yes. Yeah.
person, which is so sad.
Yeah, which I also feel is a failing of the church, to be honest, because
Mm,
we don't, like, when I was going through my separation and what have you, people didn't reach out to really support me. And I don't fault them right now anymore. Like, I did, but I at the same time I understand that we don't teach people how to support people going through those things
mm,
in the church, right? Maybe there's a group called like divorce care or something, right? But when you're
right,
actually in it, you don't want to go to that, right? You
right,
don't want
right.
to go there and have like your whole life laid bare for strangers to see. Um,
Mm,
right? But your friends who are also of faith, they're there really to encourage you to stick it out and make it work.
mm,
Right. And this is, I think, where a lot of our issues come from as well, with being of Caribbean descent, because our parents, who most of them came here as immigrants from whatever island they were from, right? They came here maybe not even with like a big plan of what their life was going to be like. I don't really think that my parents had that plan. They just,
mm. Yeah,
Canada made a big advertising campaign in the 60s, and then people just came. They didn't
yeah.
really know what they were coming for. So, to them, they've come, they weren't wealthy. Most of our families were not wealthy, right? They came and they've just made a life for themselves here. And like, my parents are both not people with degrees or anything like that, but
Mm,
they own their house. They owned a few homes, and now they own the house they're in. And I think that their concern is always just make sure you're okay,
yes, right.
right? Like, make sure you're okay financially. And also, that's the preference. That takes precedence over everything,
Yeah,
right? But we're coming to see that, okay, money is one thing, but what should take precedence is your emotional health, right?
that's right. That's right.
And that's where I feel like we have a lot of work to do. And I don't go to church regularly anymore. But I really do think that there's a lot that can be done with a faith base, um, with taking care of people in a new way,
Yeah, yeah,
where
for sure.
we don't encourage people to stay in marriages where they've been abused or they're unhappy, or just because that seems like it's the right thing to do, and that people are
Hmm.
not shunned after they do that, because that's
That's
the right thing
right.
to do.
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
No, I totally agree. I think a lot of, again, I can't even speak to that because never been married, never divorced, no divorce in our immediate family. My family, my sisters, for example, and my parents. So
Mhm.
yeah, you're 100% right. My father came, he immigrated first, and he actually came to New York first, which is kind of full circle for me, but didn't think New York was the right place to raise his
Mm.
family. So he moved to Toronto, and then we came over.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it was my dad. My mom was working in the banking industry in Trinidad. My father was he was an editor or in a newspaper. So he's a writer, editor, and he was, only he took the opportunity to come to New York, to Canada, to make a life for his family.
Mhm.
I think at that time they had the doors open. The Commonwealth said, if you want to go now,
Mhm.
because very soon you'll need passports and
Mm.
visas to get in. And that's when my father and my parents left the Caribbean with us in tow. So yeah, you're right. Who knows what actually, my uncle told us when we were in Trinidad, we went to Trinidad a couple of years ago. he was telling us a story, my father's brother, that when my dad went to him saying he was going to move to Canada, my uncle thought he was crazy and saying, "You're leaving Trinidad, you have your home, you have everything here. Why would you do it?" And my dad just believed that there was something better. And my uncle said, again, a couple of years ago, that, he was right.
Yeah.
He was totally right. At that time, he kept really pushing down at him, saying that you're crazy, you don't know what you're doing. And my dad was totally right. We have a life here that, especially in Canada, most of my life was raised in Canada.
Yeah.
I'm just so thankful that he did it.
Yeah. And I am very thankful that I live here as well. But I often think, that my parents would be happier back in Trinidad, to be honest. My mother, for sure. My dad always says, like the crime is too high and that's why he wouldn't want to go back. Yeah. But I think that they love it and they miss it,
Yeah.
That's something we can't really identify with. I guess you can because you're in the US, but not in a totally different culture, right?
Well, I think it's so funny because let me see, the three of us, my two sisters and myself, we were born in Trinidad. And my little sister Jackie, she was born in Canada, but Jackie is more Trinidadian than us. Like she's trying to make it to Trinidad for Carnival every year if she could. But again, that's where the pride of a Trini is. It is in Pan. It is in Tobago. It is in the food. It is in the jokes. It's in the dialect. The it's everything. It's sweetness in Trinidad and Tobago, and so I think that is where, like, I know I'm a Trini, for sure. But yeah, it's I'm every carnival time, everybody gets to banca and they want to go home. Yeah. And then they just sit and gripe and try and watch it live streaming and get vexed, and they say, okay, next year we're going. Every year, next year we're going. But yeah, I totally agree. It's something that it's cultural, right? But yeah, I think the last two that I had on my list was really some of these single women. The list is too exhaustive. So he's got to be this high, this weight, he's got to be able to lift me up. He's got to be able to cook. He's got to be able to, clean a house, walk the dog, fix my car, everything. And that list becomes too exhaustive. And you just don't even see what's sometimes in front of their face, right?
Yeah. And I think I do believe there are men our age somewhere out there, single, who appreciate women who don't look like they need them. See? Yes. Because this is what I think it boils down to a lot of times too, is once you're independent thinker, independent financially, you have, so many of your own friends and your plans that are independent, then a lot of times men will feel like, well, she doesn't need me.
That's a hot button. That is a hot button right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also find that men measure success by money. Right. I would not say I measure success by money at all. Like, money is just a vehicle for me to do what I want to do, which is art or,
right. Right.
So when men, a lot of times on their profiles, a lot of men will still have like their car, or if I see that they're like any kind of financial job, like financial advisor or something like that, I just know that that's not a person for me, because those are not things that align with my priorities. Right. And so then in my experience, the people that I've ended up with, I usually do date younger people than me, which I'm fine with. But then a lot of times in the end, they don't want to work as hard as I work, which is not okay. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you hit a hot button right there. I think that's one of the things that I've seen in so many conversations, when you have girlfriends sitting around and we start talking about independence, and you don't want it to be construed as we don't need you, aka the male. It's not about that. It's about preparing ourselves if we don't find you,
right,
so we can take care of ourselves, right? So and I've heard from guys that have said, yeah, the moment I do one thing wrong, you kick me out. And I'm like, Well, for me, I'm always someone. It's 3 strikes are out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I do give you a chance, but depending on what it is and the severity of said behavior, you will not have a chance, and you will not come back. So, but again, I don't want it to sound, snooty or anything like that. But I'm a woman of a particular age. I know what I want now. I understand what I have now is satisfying and good. That if you want to be a part of this, you have to come at it with that understanding,
Right.
and not be what's the word I'm looking for, self-conscious, or bring baggage to the table that any minute now I could be like, and I'm done with you. That's not how I treat people. I want to make sure that at least if you want to be a part of what I have going on, you understand that independence is critical for me.
And it's funny you mentioned baggage, because I see on a lot of men's profiles, since I still do have my dating profiles open, they will write, no baggage, no drama, and things like that, right? That you can, and when I see that, I know that that's a no for me too, because, we're all over 40 at this point. And especially when people have children, like, you have a life that happened up to this point.
That's right.
Right. And so saying, no baggage, which I find men say all the time. Women won't say that because, we understand that a bit more, that if you have children, it doesn't matter if you don't either, right? You have a story that has happened to you. So that has to be honored. And I think that men really are lonely and they don't have friends, which is a huge problem.
Not all of them, but
yeah. A lot of them don't have a good friend that they can just call up to, talk with.
Yes, bare their heart. Right? So
I can go to the game with you, but we can
exactly
have a talk about how I really feel, or can I call you crying, right? Exactly. I don't know if a lot of men have a friend like that.
Yeah.
Because even our friends like that tend to dwindle as we get older, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and I always like to embrace, I said, look, people are there for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I cherish everybody who's still in my Facebook, only because, and it's so funny, everybody's like, get off of Facebook. I'm like, that's where all my history is. Those are all my people are. But again, I don't have to see you every single day. But when I see you, I know how to find you if something triggers a memory or something. So I think everybody goes through their season in life when you determine who you want in it.
Absolutely.
Right? Or who God puts in it and takes out. And you have to be good with that, right? So, all right. Well, let's take a pause for the cause.
Okay.
And be back in a second.